Let's go. Real Talk Radio. Real Talk Radio. Plant seed and water seed.
Welcome to Real Talk Radio, the show that says just because you do not attend with Him doesn't mean that you're not in Him. To Him being Jesus, the show that plants seeds and water seeds, but God gives the increase. Let's talk about it on Real Talk Radio. This show is a continuation of the Church Folk Revolution. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, one and all, to another episode of Real Talk Radio, the show that says just because you don't attend with Him does not mean that you're not in Him. The Him being who? Jesus. Show that wants to show that plant seeds and water seeds, but God gets the increase. Today we have a special guest on the line with us, Mr. Wayne Watley. He's here with us today to share some of his stories.
Okay, that's
Yeah. So we got Brother Wayne on the line with us today. He's going to share his testimony. Andre reached out to Wayne, and Wayne agreed to come on the radio show. I'm not sure if he did. Wayne, have you done a lot of radio shows?
No, I have not.
You haven't? Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about
one
that.
other show.
Just one other. Okay. And Andre, I'm going to pass this to let Andre take over. This is Andre's baby, so I'm going to pass Andre the mic. You got it,
Well,
Dre.
first and foremost, welcome to the show, Wayne. We're glad that you've been able to, be a part of this show today. The reason why we reached out to you is because you did a video, and what part of the excerpt of the video deals with the church building and some of the things concerning the church building that led you to the decision that you made to ultimately leave the institutionalized church system altogether. And so I have a series of questions to ask you, and if you don't mind, I'd like to share those with you. Is that all right?
Sure.
All right.
Wait. Let's let Wayne introduce himself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about himself real quick, if you don't mind, Wayne. If you don't mind.
My name's Wayne. I'm from Louisiana, all over Louisiana, and I'm married, and I sell insurance. But I was a youth pastor for 10 years and a senior pastor for 4 years. And while I was a senior pastor, that's kind of whenever I started going on this journey that I'm on right now, and it's been a ride, but that's me. I play guitar. I've done a lot of worship leading as well at different churches. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what all specifically you want me to share, but right now I'm just focusing on my wife and our goals and just being the person that God's created me to be.
Amen.
Right.
Ain't nothing wrong with that at all. Amen.
Let me before you can get into it, let me tell you a little bit, Wayne, just a little bit about us. We got started in, I think, 2010 or 2011 with a group called Church Folk Revolution. I don't know if you ever heard of that, or in pimppreacher.com. And we were and we fall under that umbrella. And so we came and started our own blog talk show. We were on their radio network, and we did a lot of shows under them. All of us have left the institutionalized church. Most of us were in leadership positions, as yourself, within the system, and all of us have come out. And so we no longer believe in the church services, the church building. We don't believe any of that stuff any longer. So we kind of on the same page as you. Just want just a little background. So, and we all have our different walks, different journeys. Looks like we're on the same page now together. So go ahead, Dre.
All right. First question, how and when did you first get into ministry?
Well, it was back in 1995 when I was 15 years old, I was going to an Assembly of God church, and I got what they call the baptism in the Holy Spirit with evidence of speaking in tongues. And after that, I was told, I was coached into, you're called into the ministry, and I was like, I could preach, I can get up in front of people. So I started preaching when I was 15 years old. Wow. I really felt the hand of God on me, and I was just preaching at my church and for the youth group and for adults. And then whenever I graduated high school, I sought out my credentials in the ministry, eventually becoming ordained, and I just started getting into youth ministry. It was actually, there was a small church that needed a volunteer youth pastor, and so that kind of started me down the trail of full-time vocational ministry eventually.
All right. Now, you said that you got started in '95. That's interesting. I got saved. Well, I've been going to church, since I was a kid, but I, eventually dedicated everything over in 1995. So, we definitely have that in common. Now, you also talked about the baptism of the Holy Ghost. Can you explain that real quick?
Yeah, I didn't even know what that was until that year, and I saw other people. I didn't really go to church before that. If I did, it was Southern Baptist, and they don't really do that.
Right.
And I mean, typically they don't. And I saw all these people, and I kept hearing the preacher preach about it, and I was like, man, I want to do that too. I had no idea what I was asking for, and I just they would just, a bunch of people prayed for me on a Sunday night service. Back then, whenever churches mostly did the Sunday night services still, and they all laid hands on me and were praying in tongues really loudly, and then asked me, if I felt any difference, or just to let whatever comes out of your mouth come out of your mouth, and I did, and I didn't even understand it, and I just started speaking in tongues, and I don't know, and from there I was like, I felt like I was a super Christian. That's kind of, they don't say that, but kind of what you believe. It's like the next level, the new devils. They're going to come. Now you get us awesome Christian. So it was a strange experience, but and I didn't know what to expect because I haven't seen it much before. But it was during a revival on a Sunday night service.
Oh, okay.
So how do you feel now? I want to ask this question now because just in case I forget. But how do you feel about speaking in tongues now as opposed to how you felt about it when you first started speaking?
Well, now I feel like for most people it is like kind of like a parrot. You just copy what others are saying, and I think a lot of people it's wishful thinking. Now, I mean, I know there's a precedence for glossolalia even outside of Christianity, so I don't know if there's really something to that, but I don't really think it's like, okay, you need the baptism in the Holy Spirit. I think, and here's where I am right now, just so that you guys know, is I was so far fundamentalist at one time. I was on that side of the pendulum that I've kind of swung, further over. So right now, like I've canceled all preaching engagements, like because I still would, even after I left the institutional church, I would still speak. And then I just was like, look, I don't even know what I believe on some things now. So I'm kind of like where Paul was when he went to the desert away from everybody for 3 years, and that's kind of where I'm just trying to relearn a lot of things, and I have taken every aspect of what I believed, including Jesus' divinity, and I've just been as honest with myself as possible about everything. And so when it comes to speaking in tongues, I think a lot, and I'm just going to be honest, and I think a lot of people, they kind of want to be in this club, and so they kind of make this thing happen. I really believe that.
Yeah. Fake it till you make it. Because that's where we are, too, when it comes to tongues. Speaking in tongues, we're like, what you guys are doing in church is gibberish. That's not real tongues. Yeah. For our belief is that tongues is another earthly language. That's where we at. And so the stuff that we're hearing, you guys are like you said, I think it's parroting things. You can do it whenever you feel like it's just a drop of a hat. That's not a real tongue because, like you said, glossolalia is just language. Now, if King James or whoever translated would have used the word languages instead of the word tongues, I don't think we will be having this issue right now. But they use the word tongues, and we've spiritualized that word to mean some other angelic language or some heavenly language that the devil can't understand. So that's why you're speaking to. Get out of here, man. We don't get out of here with that. No, that's not where we believe.
Well, they were trying to copy what happened on Azusa Street, and over and over and over again, they tried to just copy that.
Go ahead, Dre.
No, I was just saying, no, let him finish. I want to hear this.
Well, the whole thing, the revival on Azusa Street, I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, is something that they thought was a mighty move of God. There were people that were Methodist, Presbyterian, Baptist, came together. Someone started speaking in tongues, and, they tried to take something that they thought was a genuine move of God and package it and reproduce it. When I don't think that we can harness God and put him in a cage like we do animals.
That's right.
And I don't know. I'm not saying whether or not that experience was true or not. I believe they thought it was, but I think over time it's become a religious thing, and it's kind of lost all the special qualities that it may have had. I wasn't there in 1901, so I have no idea. But I'm very skeptical of anybody who seeks out speaking in tongues because most of them want to do it because they think they're, Super Mario getting that mushroom,
In more ways than one.
In more ways than one.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Now, we have a term that we use here on the show and amongst our friends called the check engine light. The check engine light is basically when you're in your car and you see that check engine light comes on, it usually tells you that there's something wrong that needs to be looked at in your engine. So for you, when did that first check engine light come on for you?
For the church.
You're talking about the institutional church?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I was a pastor. I was about 3.5 years into being a senior pastor, and you guys have been in church leadership. All the nauseating meetings that you have with the elders, with the deacons, with the whatever you call it in the type of church you guys came from, but it basically ad nauseum, the meetings, and just sitting through these and listening to some of the proposals with the finances of the church. And at first I was all for it, and then I just started thinking, because a lady that went to our church, and she wasn't a tither, because she was dirt poor, single lady, 2 girls, trying to make it, and just living in poverty, and she needed help with her lights, her paying her light bills, and we were all, people were wondering, questioning her spirituality because we don't notice any giving, there's and I'm like, well, people are poor, they're not going to give if everything they get's got to feed their kids. I would honor that, and just to let you guys know, full disclosure, like I went into that church already not believing in tithing. Like I caught on to what was at one time called, I don't even know if it still is, I'm out of that circle now, the hyper grace movement back about 2007. I got out of the Assemblies of God because it's definitely, they don't like the hyper grace movement, and I got into that, and then started listening to preachers like Joseph Prince, Andrew Womack, and all. And even though they still believe in tithing. I started to kind of take what they said and apply it to everything. And so by the time I was a pastor, I preached a sermon called "God Wants You, Not Your Money," and that made some of our elders got upset because tithing went down, and it was my fault. And so bringing us back to this lady that needed money for her to pay her electric bill, it was my fault because the church was losing money. I mean, they were basically going broke, and they were like, well, how are we going to pay our bill? How are we going to pay our bills, and how are we going to – we've still got to – the church, even though the building was 60 years old and paid off, they still had and they weren't in debt except the electric bill, the water bill. My salary was the biggest expense. So at that point, I started feeling guilty getting paid because we couldn't afford to help somebody else because I had to make I started out at $36,000 a year at this small 50-people church, which is crazy. But I thought that was one time I could have defended that, and I thought that was exactly what God was wanting me to do. And when you start feeling guilty because you think that you're sitting over here in a pastor's job, and in my opinion, a pastor does not, like an institutionalized church pastor, they really have to find ways to keep busy. And so to get paid a full-time job like that at a small church, it was just, I started feeling guilty, so I cut my salary back first. I couldn't let it go. I went and got another job and eased myself out of a salary over the last couple of months there. But that light went off in that meeting whenever I realized that we couldn't help the people in our church because of what our focus of our money was really on. And I felt guilty, and I started to look into things. I read a book by Frank Viola and George Barna called Pagan Christianity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we got the same book.
That opened up my eyes to a lot of things.
Yeah. So that's crazy that you would say that, because the last sermon I ever preached was on tithing, and I felt so uncomfortable preaching that sermon. But that was the last sermon ever. And that was back in 2010, I think in the summer of 2010, the last sermon, and it was on tithing. And I was talking about how tithing was what you're supposed to do, but your blessing is on the offering. And I likened it to a child who you give chores in the house. So, you're supposed to clean your room, take out the trash, and do this stuff. That's what you're supposed to do. But you get blessed when you do something else. Say you go wash daddy's car, or, you cut the grass, or something else outside of your ordinary chores, and that's where you're going to get paid. That's where you're going to get your allowance from. So what you're supposed to do that. Do that first, and then you'll start getting blessed. And it was, back then I thought I did a great job, but after I came out, it just, looking back on it, that's just ironic that the last sermon I ever preached was about tithing. Never preached in an institutional church, I should say. But it's just crazy, man. And the fact that you said you were feeling guilty says a lot about your character, because as well as we know, there are tons of preachers out there who have been in your position now, they could care less about the less fortunate. Somebody in church that is struggling, but they don't care. As long as they're getting their money, they have no cares whatsoever. And then those gentlemen, I guess the deacons and the elders who were in there, more concerned about the building than they were with the welfare of one of their members. Now, did they have a meeting to kick her out or something like that, or what did they do with the lady?
I raised the money on the side, and we paid her light bill.
Oh, okay.
That's what's up.
Okay.
That's what's up. And see, a lot of times
we kept that situation under wraps, and she didn't know. She assumed it was just something that we were doing, and I didn't. and we made no big deal about it. And you know, I took up money from people who I trusted, and then I had made it. I made a check out to the church, from the church to her, so it all the money went into the church and then through her, just so there would be so she would feel good about still going to that church. And we didn't want to just say, hey, you know, there was a whole meeting that was half of it was about you, and I didn't want any of that stuff to come out, so I just did what I could do to save face at that time.
And you know, we've done shows concerning how, you know, when resources come into the church, you know, we've done shows on how these resources are usually allocated into the church. And one of the things that we've noticed is that between 80 and 90% of monies, just monies alone, that come into the church, whether it's through donations, tithes and offerings, planting seeds, or whatever the case may be, 80 to 90% of that money usually goes right back into the institutionalized church building, which leaves a mere 10 to 20% left over, if there's anything left over, to help people in the church, people in the
outreach,
community, and things of that nature. And so when you said that, not even knowing, you know, that this is, you know, something that you've witnessed for yourself, you know, it's almost like a confirmation as to what we've been talking about for years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's the way it is. And in the church I was at, there was supposed to be 10% of all the income went towards missions, whether it was local or international.
Right.
And we found a loophole in that by including our youth department as a mission and our children's department as a mission. And so only 5% actually we sent off to different organizations of the church, to like the local the homeless shelter, or we sent it to other ministers that we like. And then like half of that 10%, the 5%, went right back into our children's and youth ministry, so they could have games and pizza and all kind of stuff like that. So, and I have to say that I was a driving force behind doing that, and that was years before any kind of revelation that I had about money in church. So, I've been a part of it, man. I've done all the stuff. I found the loopholes into our 10% giving to missions and making it go back into the church. And the thing is, that stuff, the pastor's salary, paid for the building, all that stuff is not only protected by the pastor in most of these churches, but these elders even seem like they get even more offended whenever you talk about cutting the pastor's pay or stuff like that. You know, there's a lot of protection and a lot of encouragement and enabling in that whole system. For as a pastor starts to feel, well, I guess they're right. You know, if a pastor does start feeling guilty, or if a light bulb goes off in their mind, you know, then they're reinforced by the culture that they're in, you know, by the other pastor friends they have, by their own elders who say, you need to get paid, you're our pastor. And so it's hard to get out of that cycle.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here. I just
okay.
finished a sentence. I was wondering if we hung up, but yeah. That's just that's kind of where it is with a lot of churches. Though that was the only one I was senior pastor at, but I was youth pastor at others, and I mean most of the staff at bigger churches are treated like it's just a normal job, and you know it's just kind of strange.
Career.
Yeah,
we did a show called we did a show called Pastoring. Is it a calling or a career? And I was, you know, it's a pretty good show. We got some funky feedback from it, but you know, a lot of people don't understand that. You know, a lot of men, and that especially if they go to seminary, and they believe they come out. Well, I just went to college for 4 years and I got this degree, so now I'm working in my field, quote unquote, and I deserve to get paid. And that's not, you can't find that anywhere in Scripture where any of the apostles or the disciples went to school to earn a degree in order to go and preach the gospel. But somehow that's the only way to do it now, or the only way to be accepted, one of the only ways, unless you're very charismatic. You can be very charismatic and, say all the Christian cliches and the Christian speeches. Now, let me jump in and ask you a question. And it's kind of off track. Sorry, Dre, I had to jump in and ask this of Wayne. How did your family react to you taking a step back, stepping out of the pulpit and stepping out of the church altogether? Specifically, your wife, or or your parents, if they're still around. How did your family and friends react to you stepping out?
Well, my wife was there with me in unity the whole time. She came to all the meetings, and she saw exactly where I was drawing my conclusions. I mean, because she was right in the middle of it. She was in the thick of it. And that's not saying we're on the exact same journey right now. We're not. I've kind of swung a little to the opposite end of the pendulum than she has. She's more center and still considers herself a Christian, but I don't like the label because of what it brings with it. But my family, on the other hand, my mom, she's fine with whatever. And my dad and I, we don't really talk, but the craziest thing was my cousins who are one of my cousins is like a super Christian, like really wrapped up, involved in her church. Her pastor is definitely a cult of personality, and so she's wrapped up in there. So is everybody else that's a part of that church she goes to. She, even when I started talking about leaving the church, she thought automatically that means that I'm no longer saved, I'm no longer a Christian, I've just gone off the deep end without even talking to me. Some of my other family members have already, I haven't even talked to them in about 2 years, almost 2 years now. So, yeah, but not my close family, just people who were, the more super religious family member they are, the less likely they are to talk to me.
But
wow.
But here's the thing, and I've just been doing some studying on this aspect alone. Why is it that people automatically believe that just because you decided to leave the institutionalized church system, the church building itself, that we've automatically left God, left Christ?
I think it's because when we're in the church system, we're brainwashed and thinking people are backslidden if they haven't been seen, that they need to get back into the church. The goal is to get them back into the seats as paying members of that church, or else that equates to their backsliding because they're forsaking the assembling together, as some have. And so that means that they're fallen away. They're, for some reason, there's a problem if they don't want to be a part of they call it the body of Christ, like the institutional church and the body of Christ are the same thing. Like, if they don't want to be a part of that, then we must have a problem with God. If they have a problem with God's body, and I think that's been part of it, because if you're a part of a church and then you just leave, it's like you lost all those friends too. I mean, not always. There's some that are a part of that sheep mindset, but overall, you're not supposed to continue with them because they left, they're bitter or whatever. No matter, even if they're not bitter, if they all of a sudden fell off the face of the earth, something must be wrong, and they don't want to see us because of the God in us or whatever it could be. I think I think that's just my guess from my experience, that's got a lot to do with it. And so when you leave the institution, you're leaving God.
So question, what is your view on, because you just mentioned, not forsaking the assembling of the saints. What is your view on Hebrews 10:25?
Well, I'll just give you an example of not forsaking the assembling together. Yesterday morning, me and 3 other Christian friends of mine who are all out of the institutional church, we got together at a casino buffet and had breakfast and sat there for about 2.5 hours and just encouraged each other. Of course, they're not in the same place I am, but they're very gracious towards me. They've kind of come back around. They've already kind of gotten over what I'm in right now. So, but they're very encouraging to me. And we were sitting at a casino buffet, like, you know, not in the boat. There are river boats where I live. Not in that part. Like in the restaurant, in the pavilion. Every Saturday we meet there, and it's different people come of about a group of maybe 10 people. Sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 10, but we'll just get together and they may talk golf or football. They may talk whatever it is that people like, or they may talk, but it always leads to us being encouraged in one another. I think that being with your brothers and, you know, or being with your sisters, if, you know, for my wife, her sake, is what we need, because we need each other. And whatever that means, I don't think that means going into an institution, but just being real with people, having life with people. And it doesn't even have to be something like, well, we meet every Saturday, but that's just because we're busy and we want to make a deliberate time to meet with each other. But it's also spontaneous times. You don't have to have a deliberate time. When you get together with other believers, you are not forsaking the assembling.
Exactly. My man. We're with you. 100%,
yeah, definitely.
man.
You know, one of the
100%.
things one of the things in pagan Christianity that Frank and George mentioned is the seating in the institutionalized church versus the seating that is, you know, with people just gathered together. When you got people who are gathered together, your seating is to a point where everyone is looking at each other, everyone is interacting with each other. There's no one above, no one below. Everyone, you know, is basically on the same level, and you know, you're all interacting with each other, as opposed to the way that seating is now, where everyone's seat is facing the front with one person who has been elevated that is basically the in the spotlight. And so, you know, when you look at the two seating arrangements, you know what I'm saying, there's more intimacy in the first rather than it is in the second. And so, when you gather together in that manner, no matter how you decide to do it, when you decide to do it, but when you gather together in that manner, you know, you kind of get a sense of what's going on in people's lives. You know, you can't do that when you're facing when you're facing the back of somebody else's head.
Yeah.
The former is true fellowship. Right.
Yes. The kitchen table is a lot more intimate than the pews.
Exactly.
Everybody's on the same level. There's no hierarchy at a kitchen table. I mean, there's a head of the table the dad sits at. You know, if you want to see, you can make anything into a hierarchy if you want. But, you know, at a restaurant or wherever, when we get together, it's that we don't have a pastor in our group. It's people working in the giftings of pastor, and that's something that people have, but it's not a hierarchical. In my opinion, it's not something that's I'm lording over you. A pastor, in my opinion, and based upon my study of church history and just on you know, what a pastor really is more like a father of the church or the body. And I feel like, even though right now I'm questioning a lot of things, I know God's real and Jesus is real still, and I still feel close to God. I just feel like I'm a better pastor whenever I'm talking with someone in my insurance office and they're telling me personal information about why they need insurance and what's going on and things. I feel like I'm more effective of a pastor in my secular vocation than I ever was when I was a pastor of an institutional church.
Wow. That says a lot. And I agree with you. I honestly agree with you. Even back when I was still in church, we had there was a couple, and they owned a little building, I guess like a rental hall, and they would invite people to come, like Christian performers. If you had rappers, singers, comedians, they would just allow them to come and do things like that for free, and they did a lot of stuff for their community. In a little area where they had their hall, it was a low income area. And they would allow people to come. They would feed the people in the community. And I would often say that these guys, they don't have a church, but they are pastors. To me, from my point of view, I said, because what they're doing, they're giving advice. They're feeding people. They don't have to, spending their own money. They're paying this hard to let people come in for free and do these things, and they're spending their own money and time. And I looked at them as pastors more so than I looked at my own pastor as a pastor, because I had issues with my pastor back when I was in. I was assistant pastor. I wasn't the lead pastor, but and I was like, these guys are real pastors. They're out here in the community helping people, but yet they don't have that title. So people look at them, that's just Calvin and Sharon. They're not anybody special. But to me, they were pastors. So I agree with you, man. I agree with you.
That's right.
A lot of people, they don't even realize that they're dealing with pastors, but it's how they make someone feel. Like, I'm sure more people went to them whenever they were in need than they did go to the pastor, because the pastor has the entourage anyway. It's hard to get to him.
Yeah. If you can get to him. Like
real pastor.
Yeah. Now you got to make a meeting 6 months out just to meet with the pastor. What kind of crap is that?
Emergency situations, you got to go through the armor bearers in order to get to the pastor.
Did you have armor bearers?
No, I did not.
Okay.
In fact, I had a lady that started coming to my church. I had a multicultural church, and there was a couple that started coming towards the end there, and I never even heard of the concept of armor bearers until she came and tried to implement that, because her other pastor had an armor bearer, and this was an African American family, and I don't know if that's something that's dominant in those type of churches or what, but either that or it's not been a part of my church experience. And she was trying to become my armor bearer, and for one, if I had one, it wouldn't be another lady unless it's my wife. But the whole thing I thought was kind of odd. It was based on, I guess, I know that there's some scriptural stuff that they pull to get that, and there's a whole book written about it apparently. I never read it, but
Terry Nance.
Yeah.
My favorite name.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. That's my. Yeah, it is big in a black church, armor bearers. That's that self-esteem entitlement. I'm the pastor. Do what you want. Do what I say. And I got my bodyguard. But go ahead, Lenoa. Sorry, man.
No problem. Wayne, I wanted to ask you, because I know Louisiana is real big on the type of church experiences that we've all had, especially you. Are there any other people who are now outside of the IC that you run into, and how's that going?
Locally, it's been hard because a lot of my close friends when I was in the church, they eventually, when I left there, that church, the whole experience of how I left was very surreal. I'll have to tell you about that in a minute, but few of them stayed at that church and are still there today with their new pastor. And this happened almost 2 years ago now. And some of them left, and all of them just about went to other churches. The only people that I know, there is a community of people in my area that are outside of the institutional church that still are followers of Christ, but they definitely were not a part of my institutional church experience. That I could not. I tried to save all of them and tell them about it, and I mean save them, like get them out of the institution, but they were so resistant. And at that point, a lot of things happened to kind of make them wonder where was I going, because I started preaching different about 6 months before I left. And so I thought I was preparing them, but really I was kind of creating a wedge, because they were holding on to their ideas more than they were actually trying to learn from what I was trying to say. So all my experience with people that are outside the institutional church are people who came out of other church experiences that were completely separate from mine. And also a friend of mine on Facebook had a lot. I've only met her once. My wife and I went and met up with P.K. Langley. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of her.
Heard of her?
Yes. Yeah, but she's a friend of mine now, and she was her and her ex-husband, I guess, were pastors up in Michigan, and I guess I got closer to her and started talking to her about it. At first, whenever I was still in the institutional church, I saw her as a protagonist, and then I was like, wait, I kind of see some of the things she's saying now. So she helped me out, but on some things. And then my local family, who I still hang out with and consider a part of my church, they came all out of different areas and stuff. So that's they are here though. The church the church that is not a part of the institution is around here, but it's not like they advertise on the website or anything.
Right. Yeah.
So your exodus wasn't painful at all, or a painful process for you, except for the fact that, of course, like you said, when you were preaching a different message, none of your friends kind of came out. They juxtaposed what you said and stayed inside. Is that painful for you?
It was. In fact, we wouldn't even talk for a while after I left. The whole process of me leaving, about 6 months before I left, I read this short book by a guy named, what's his name? I think Mark White, called Was Church God's Idea? And
yes. We used to be friends on Facebook.
But I read that. What's that?
We used to be friends on Facebook. He deleted me for some reason, but yeah, we were friends. We had his book. We did a show named with that exact topic too. But yeah, I know Mark. Yeah, know him.
Well, I did a sermon based upon that book about 6 months before I left. I even said, "Look, I'm reading from this book with excerpts." Of course, I interjected a lot, but I said, "Look, you guys need to read this book. It's a short book." And I did a sermon on it. It's online even now still. It's called Was Church God's Idea by Mark Winter, I guess is his name. Yeah. And so I did that about 6 months before I left, and then I started preaching more about stuff like that, about just leading more towards that way, about why are we a 501c3? Why, I started tipping the sacred cows. And I thought I was preparing people, but really I was creating a wedge between me and my congregation. Of course, I don't think that, but my congregation. But, they were looking for a pastor that would tell them exactly what to do, but as long as it was within the confines of institutional Christianity. That was the line. And so the circumstances behind us leaving was the building was such a money pit. There was so much work needing to be done to that building where it was not safe, and it's still not safe to use that building. The ventilation has a lot of feces from birds and squirrels in it. They won't get it fixed because of how much it costs. They didn't have the money. And I was saying, look, we were also subletting the building for Sunday night service to a Hispanic congregation. Like, look, why don't we give them this building, maybe sell them the land so we can go and do something or whatever else. I was trying to compromise and trying to get them step by step out of this idea. And I said, why don't we give them this building? They'll fix it up. They're the ambitious ones here. We're not, apparently. And why don't we go and rent this office space that's plenty big for a congregation of 50, and it was like $200 a month. And I was like, look, why don't we start doing this instead of spending thousands of dollars a month keeping this building? We were being blessed with the ability to have this other place. And I was like, this is an opportunity we need to take, getting out of this building. And so we had a church vote. All church members people came out of the woodworks that never would come to church, but they were still members on the books. And they came and voted to keep that building that they never came to. So and I gave them an ultimatum on the list of the ballot list where they could vote. I put on there, the options are you stay in this building and find a new pastor, or we give this building away to the Hispanic church that meets here, and then we go and we find a smaller office space, and let's do this. Let's just do something more organic sounding. And it was kind of a stepping stone. I couldn't go straight from let's have the institution to let's meet in houses. I had a plan, but no, we didn't even get that far. So, this congregation's not on this journey with me. And it was really like people would come in and people came to our house when we were talking about what we were wanting to do and how we were wanting to break down the hierarchy and how I was not going to be a paid staff member at this new phase of leaving this church building. And someone came into the church and started asking all these questions about money, about all these things. And she was really planting negative seeds in other people's minds about this. And this was a lady that didn't even come to the church. She was in there specifically to make sure that the status quo was kept there so that a new pastor could come in and continue the same madness they've been doing there for 50 years. And so we left there. We didn't do any new church thing, which there was the only point was going to be to kind of ease them out of the institution anyway. So we didn't see a need for that. We didn't want to build up anything new. We left there, and it was really hurtful at first. I let one of my lead deacon, I gave him a copy of the Pagan Christianity. I have the audio book and truck driver. So yeah, he's a truck driver. So I said, hey, go ahead and listen to this. It'll take you maybe a couple days, but so he listened to it and he gave it back to me, and he was like, man, I just can't. I just don't see what you see. That book was offensive, and I just don't believe it. And so he's still there at that church, but I think they're even about to leave now. I think they're starting to. I think it took them a couple years, but I think it's sinking in. He's starting to call me again, and we're starting to hang out. And I think he hasn't said it, but I think he kind of is like, yeah, I get it now. You know, I get what was going on when you decided to leave.
And usually that's how it is. You know, it's all about seed planting. You know what I'm saying? Most people aren't going to get it the first time. You know, and a lot of times that's a good thing because you know they have a process that they're going to have to go through, just like we had a process we had to go through. We didn't get it the first time either. You know, people came along and said this, and then they said that. You know, it was like, nah, I don't know what you're talking about. You crazy, get out my face. You know what I'm saying? Until you started to see this stuff for yourself, and then you were like, you know something? Oh, that person had a point there. I don't know why I didn't see this before. You know, so it's all a process. It's all a process.
So Wayne, a little bit about us, and I'm going to ask if you had the same experience. When we first came out, we were already out, but we had this idea that we were going to pull everybody out, and we became, for lack of a better term, IC terrorists. Yes, where we would go, and if you were going to church, we would, lambast you. You're just stupid. How come you can't see this? You're blind. You don't read your Bible. And we would just lamblast on Facebook and social media people who were still within the church. And we had just came out. I think it's a zeal, but not according to knowledge. But we were we had it out for people who were still in the church. Did you have that same kind of deal, or was your exodus a little different?
No, if you would have seen my Facebook page around that time, whenever I was leaving that church, you guys would have been okay with the post. You would have appreciated it anyway. But I lost a lot of friends during that time on Facebook. Of course, these are just Facebook friends. It's not a big deal. But I know I was proclaiming. This was my new calling. Was at one time I thought this was my new calling was to rescue people out of the institution, but that does not work.
Right.
No,
okay.
People can't just take it all in like that.
Okay, so that's a pretty common thing. I thought it was just it took us years to get over that. I guess just maturity. As you mature, you learn not to be so self-righteous, because we were very self-righteous. Like we got the truth.
Yeah.
You guys don't. You're dumb. We're smart. And on that, I did want to ask you another question. While you were in, what type of preacher were you? A hell and fire brimstone preacher? Because I saw one of your YouTube videos where you were out. I think you guys were out walking, witnessing or whatever, and you were praying for somebody for healing or something like that. Were you like a faith type healer too? Like name it, claim it, believe it, and receive it. Were you that type of preacher? What type of preacher were you?
I definitely. Like I said, one of my biggest influences when I was in the church was Andrew. He's not a preacher, but name it and claim it, and Joseph Prince, the grace. I normally didn't preach really like hellfire or nothing like that. I was really the whole time seeing pastor anyway.
Are you breaking up?
Okay. When I was in the Assemblies of God, I was emulating a lot of hellfire and brimstone preaching. But by the time I became a pastor, I'd kind of gotten past a lot of that, and I was just it was about hyper grace for me, and name it and claim it. God wants you to be happy. God wants you to be well. I was already at that point. I was preaching the love of God, and I think I only had one sermon about hell the whole time I was a pastor. So that's the kind of preacher I was. I wasn't Joel Osteen, but I was like, no, yeah, I was, but I was a lot more like I always would preach about the covenant of grace or the new covenant. And how we mix the law and grace and all that.
Yes.
I was more of a teacher type of preacher. I didn't shout a whole lot. Sometimes I would, but I didn't feel natural when I would do that. So I tried everything. I had to find myself. So I found, I went through and emulated everybody until I figured out myself and who I was. And I was more of a teacher than a preacher when it came to what I did in my sermons.
Okay. I think I was just like you. I was more of a teacher. I never did any hooping and hollering, but I did teach on, name it and claim it, believe it and receive it. I taught those kind of things as well. Dre, when you preached, what kind of preacher were you?
I was more the teacher as well. I mean, I tried to do some hooping and hollering because that's pretty much what everyone else was doing at the time. But I also came to the realization that a lot of times when you hoop and holler, you don't really get to hear what's going on. You know what I'm saying? It's all coming in flashes. So I started to bring it down and started to teach more. That was pretty much me.
Mm-hmm. Now, Wayne, does your wife still go to church at all, or is she just out of the church? She just considers herself a Christian and out of the church?
Yeah, she doesn't really go. She sometimes misses it because we don't have any children, but we want to have children, and there's been some issues with that. It's a whole different story, but we would like to have children, and she's definitely wanting by the time we have kids to. All she knows, she grew up in church, so she knows her whole social life as a kid involved church programs. And so just for that sake of the children, like she doesn't go anywhere now, but she does miss the social aspect of church, and she's having a hard time finding that outside of the institutional church. But she doesn't. She's sitting in the living room watching Grey's Anatomy right now, so she's not at church.
Okay. Well, I can tell you because I've been married. I actually met my wife in church, and I think I met her the day I actually joined my first church, and I moved up in ranks from just a regular member up in ranks. It's even weird that you have to say that about a church. But I moved up in ranks to be the assistant pastor at that church from just a regular member within a matter of 6 years. So I met my wife in that church, and to this day, my wife still goes to church. And, I'm out. She doesn't agree with a lot of what I say or do. She'll listen to the radio show every once in a blue moon, but she still really doesn't agree with a lot of what we say. And, it caused some issues. There were some issues in our marriage, not just the marriage, but the house. And there was some stuff that I didn't know about till we went to counseling, and some stuff came up about the church, the first church we were in, because she said they treated me like I could do no wrong, and I was the golden child in the church, and they would defer to me for everything, and she felt like they treated her like a third-class citizen. That drove a wedge between us, which I had no idea. I was fresh, new in church. I thought I was doing what God called me to do. No clue until we went to counseling, and we had already left the church when we were in counseling because we were fighting all the time, and that came up, and that it was like a light bulb went off in my head. Like, that is one of the reasons why we fight, because she didn't feel protected by her husband, but I didn't know that she felt that way because she never told me. And just how sometimes the church drives a wedge in between people's marriages. We're okay now. I wish she wouldn't go to church, but she still does. Matter of fact, she's upstairs getting dressed. I wish she would stay down and watch Grey's Anatomy, but, she's on her way to church. And we have 2 kids, and, I'm not going to stop her from taking them. I'll let them make their own decisions when they're old enough, the way I made my own decisions.
Right.
So we're okay now. We don't fight about it anymore. We don't have a lot of biblical discussions because, we tend to she'll get mad at me and shut down. We've all had these conversations with people who still go to church. So, that goes on from time to time. You're away from biblical discussions somewhat. We do have them every now and then. And we'll pray together, pray with the boys together, and I try to stay away from religious jargon in my prayer time. But it can be hard. Yeah. It can be hard.
Yeah. And one of the things that I wanted to say is, as far as your wife, making the adjustment from coming out of the church, is that, and we say this a lot on Real Talk Radio, is that there's a detoxification that needs to take place a lot of times. Because what a lot of people don't understand, church can sometimes be a drug and addicting. You understand what I'm saying? And when you come out of church and that drug is no longer available, you really do start going through withdrawals, and you really want to start going back to church because you don't like that hurt, you don't like that isolating feeling. You know what I'm saying? But what happens is that, eventually that stuff goes away. God replaces those people lost with new people who now think and feel the same way that you do about a lot of, a lot of things that, that you've now come to find as truth now. You understand what I'm saying? Before it wasn't, that wasn't it. Now you come to see, maybe this is this is the truth. And now you have other people that come along. Yeah, I've known that for years. Let me tell you a little something about it. And so, it just takes time. For me, it took about 3, almost 4 years before I lost the desire to want to go back and fellowship in somebody's church.
Yeah.
And education is also a huge part of that, because once you're out of the institutionalized church, the one thing that you can't help but doing is start looking at the Bible for yourself and start researching things for yourself. And once you find a lot of the things that was going on in the church isn't biblical, you start saying to yourself, well, why do I want to go back into all of that?
Yeah. I tell people I graduated from church. Summa cum laude from church, so I don't need to go back. There's no reason. We just got next door neighbors. New neighbors moved in, and he wanted to borrow my lawnmower. And I let him borrow the lawnmower, and he invited me to church. I said, "Give me my lawnmower back." No, I'm just playing. But I told him, I said I graduated from church, and he chuckled. He thought I was just joking. I was like, "No, there's no reason for me to go back to church." But that's another story. But were you about to say something,
yeah.
Wayne?
Well, talking about our wives, my wife, the entire time she was a pastor's wife, hated it. So she really just felt like she had to live up to some false ideas about a pastor's wife. And it was a lot of pressure on her. So she was kind of relieved whenever I got out of that. And she, you're talking about she wants to go back for the social aspect, but she never does. So I don't know how big of a deal it is to her. It's something like for a while there, I couldn't even go back. Every once in a while, if she wants to go, I can go to church with her, but it bugs me, though, because when I go, you cannot unsee what you've already seen, and you're sitting in there thinking, okay, this is BS, and I don't want to be critical, and I feel like when I go to a church now, it's sitting there pointing everything out, and I don't want to be that person, so I try not to go.
Yes, brother, I'm with you.
Quick question. I'm sorry, John. Quick question. Did they call your wife the First Lady?
No, they didn't. Well, the same ones who tried to introduce armor bearers did call her that. That's the only one.
Yeah, that's the black church thing. Real big in the black church. That's what they do. Yeah. But I'm with you, man. I had to stop going. Once we didn't have a radio show. It was maybe a month and a half ago. We didn't have a radio show, maybe 2 months. And it was Mother's Day. And I went to church with my wife on Mother's Day, and I was like, why did I come in here? Like, oh, my God. And like you said, you're trying not to point out everything that's wrong, and you just can't help it. So I was so ready to go. I actually fell asleep, fell asleep, and didn't feel no shame. They were standing up for praise and worship. I'm not standing up for prayer. I'm not standing up because the pastor walked in the room. I ain't doing none of that stuff. I don't care how they look. And my wife, you better not put no money in that basket. But I know how you feel, man. I know exactly how you. Now, I can say this too about my wife. I was the one. I was the gung ho. We're going to church no matter what. We were going. We're sick. We're going to the hospital. That's what the church is for. Matter of fact, on our honeymoon, we got married that Saturday. Believe it or not, our honeymoon, we weren't leaving until Monday. So we were in church that next Sunday, 9 o'clock, for a Sunday school. That's how sold out I was, for church. And my wife has never been sold out. My wife's like, she likes going to church, but she doesn't have to go. We're going to church, and she never was. She was like, I'm not tithing. We don't have enough money. I was like, oh, we have to tithe. That's what we got to do. You cannot not tithe. What's wrong with you? You want to be cursed with a curse? My wife was like, we don't have it. We can't tithe. So I would tithe off of my paycheck, but she wouldn't tithe off of hers. And on the inside, I'd be kind of happy that she had that stance, but on the outside, I was like, man, you're sinning. You're supposed to tithe. My wife has never been sold out. Have you ever heard the term mad church disease, Wayne?
No.
Okay, but you probably can put it together what it means. Mad church disease. People are just so churchy,
Yes.
So I had mad church disease. My wife I had like stage 4 mad church disease. My wife had she had stage 2 mad church disease. So she wasn't as sold out as I was. And she's probably at the same level that she was back then. She can go or not go. Because I'm just too tired. I don't feel like going. So some people's wives, I think Andre, your first wife, she was like, I'm going to church no matter what, right?
She was stage 4. She was stage 5 if that was even possible. I mean, even my aunt. I remember my aunt came to visit us, and I had to go to work, and so my wife and my aunt was sitting at the table talking. My aunt told me about this just maybe 6 months ago. She was like, "Yo, your first wife was a church nut. Everything that came out of her mouth was pastor said this, pastor said that, pastor said this." So, I'm so glad I dodged that bullet.
Yeah, it's just, I was just saying that we have to be mindful of that, especially when we have spouses and you're married and one decides to leave and the other one wants to stay. I think I was a little lucky in that area where my wife never was the type to say that she had to go. She went because she wanted to go, and she's not a member of any church, but she's bouncing back and forth to different churches. Wherever she wants to go, that's where she'll go. And I think I was lucky in that, and I think that saved us. Because I don't know how I would have reacted if she was like your first wife, Andre. I don't know how I would have reacted. I mean, probably would be divorced.
My first wife, we actually ended up getting divorced based on the relationship that she had with the church and the pastor. I mean, like I said before, not only did everything that come out of her mouth start off with pastor said, you know what I'm saying, but decisions of mine would get overridden based on what thus saith the Lord, quote unquote. And it got to a point when I decided to leave the church, I was going to call pastor and let her know exactly why I decided to leave the church and whatnot. She beat me to it. Pastor, Andre done left the church. I don't know what we going to do, but he said he's not going to church no more. I'm like, that wasn't your place to do that. No, and so
it almost feels like adultery, huh?
What's that?
It almost feels like adultery.
It does.
That's exactly That's. I mean, it got to a point where I had to say to the pastor, I said, because my wife was my pastor's one of my pastor's spiritual children, and that's a whole nother concept. And one day I had to say to the pastor, I was like, look, the Bible said that a woman shall cleave to her husband. What was it? A man shall cleave to his
wife. Yeah.
Yeah, and the two shall become one. You know what I'm saying? And she was, she was like, you can't tell me that. She comes to me and comes and talks to me, and I'm like, really though? So.
Wow.
It was really doomed to from the beginning because even our union, how we even got together, was based on what pastor said. I had stage 4 mad church disease, and if pastor, who's a prophet, said that God said you two were supposed to be together, then we were supposed to be together. If pastor said that I was supposed to be with a horse, I'd be married to a horse.
Of course.
Of course.
It's amazing how much we let the pastors rule our lives. It's something that I've been a part of churches like that where the pastors are larger than life and whatever they say is gospel, and that's a scary place to be in. Like as a pastor, to allow yourself to get put into that position of power, because I'm sure that it just creates this monster that has to continually grow.
Yep, the ego, and then that pride steps in, and arrogance. We've dealt with a lot of pastors on this show, and especially on the Church Folk Revolution, the Pimp Preacher. They dealt with a lot of pastors, and even if they're wrong, they'll never admit it. I'm not going to say never. It'll be hard for them to admit it. But, we run across people like you, Wayne, who were pastors, and the light came on. Would you, what advice would you give to a pastor who's having some of these feelings that you're having? They know that something is off. I remember reading somewhere where it came to tithing, and this pastor said he can't not teach it because we need this building. He felt bad every time he had to teach it, but he had to in order to maintain his lifestyle. His kids were in school. He had to keep his house and a car. He had to maintain his lifestyle. He knew it was wrong, but he still had to teach it. What advice would you have for a pastor that's in that position, that knows the truth, but because his lifestyle is dependent upon this money, he has to maintain it? So what advice would you have for him or her?
Well, I'll tell that pastor the same thing that was told to me right before I decided to pull the trigger and leave the institutional church. I was consumed with fear because most of my income was coming from the church, and there's definitely hope. I may not even at this point be making as much as I was when I had an income as a pastor plus the job I've got, but somehow I'm surviving. And I tell you what, I would not trade it in. If there is fear there, if you're a pastor listening and you're having these thoughts, there is fear there about finances. But I'm telling you what, if you're going to be okay. I'm okay. We're okay. And if you just if you're really doing this because you feel like God is pushing at your heart, then God's not going to put you into something that's going to fail. I mean, it may not look exactly what you want. You may not even have control over everything, but you're going to be okay. And, in fact, you're going to be happier. When you leave, it's going to be you're going to be a lot happier as a person. If now that you know, Pastor, that's listening to this, now that you know you cannot unsee and you're not going to be happy. I don't care. You may be making double what you'd be making if you weren't there, but you're not going to be happy with your life. And there's things that you need to consider besides financial stability, because that's something that you can easily take care of, and God's going to take care of you. But just get past the fear, because it is scary, but it's going to be okay. Look, everybody, all the pastors that leave the institutional church, they're fine. They make it okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a question for you. I'm going to change gears just a little bit. Not much, just a little. So, Wayne, tell me on your views about the Bible.
Well, when I started questioning the institutional church, I started questioning everything, including whether or not the Bible was infallible and inerrant, because I grew up in a very fundamentalist denomination where one of their tenets of faith was we believe the Bible is inerrant and infallible. And I started questioning that because I don't know. Right now I'm at a place to where I believe that the Bible was inspired. I believe they're inspired writing. They are. And I believe we're all inspired. I don't think that Paul, Peter, James, Moses, Samuel, David, all the authors, I don't think they had anything more or less than what a believer today has as far as hearing from God. Now, I think that the Scripture will confirm things. I believe that, and I believe the Scripture is historically important and is important for creating a precedent of church doctrine. But I don't think that everything is perfect. Even Paul, a couple times in Scripture, said, "This is me talking, not God," and he gave his opinion on something. Or I don't believe in a literal, and you guys may disagree with me, but I don't believe in a literal interpretation of Genesis. And I think that when you think a Bible or a book, any book, is inerrant or infallible, you get fundamentalism, which in any religion can be a dangerous thing, in my opinion.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Now,
Go ahead.
Let me see. My opinion on the Bible. I think that the Bible in its current form, our English translation has many errors in it. So I'm not. You have a lot of people who are King James version only. They say other versions, contemporary versions, leave stuff out, put stuff in. And I say every translation is going to have those type of errors. I believe that the original manuscripts in their the manuscripts or the scriptures in their original language are perfect. But what we have now, because you could see a lot of errors just in the King James Version. People don't believe that. We had a radio show where we talked about the King James Version, or what would you call it, Bible controversy or whatever. And, we got a lot of what I say flack, well, a lot of comments on that YouTube video. But it's just me, my personal view. I take the Bible for what it is, but when I'm studying, I have interlinear where I can go and see what some of the Greek words are, what the Hebrew words are, and I could, tell. I use different versions, different translations, and that's just me, and I'm not going to castigate anybody if they only use the King James Version. So I don't want anybody castigating me if I use multiple translations. But that's just me. That's my view on the Bible.
I mean, that's pretty much that's pretty much how I look at it as well. Because you have to realize that, especially when you're looking at the Gospels, the Gospels were written, and Frank Viola has another book, which I would also recommend. It's called The Untold Story of the New Testament Church. And basically what that book does is it places all of the writings, all of the incidences, everything that took place during the time of Acts in chronological order, so that people can actually get a vivid timeline of when different things took place. For instance, not a lot of people know that Romans was not the first book that Paul wrote. It was actually Galatians. And the reason why he wrote Galatians, what was going on at the time that he wrote Galatians. But the reason why I bring that up is because your boy just lost his thought.
You just lost your thought.
I just lost my thought that bad.
Galatians?
We'll be right back after these messages.
Wow. Okay, here we go. Bam, that's what it was. Okay, so a lot of times when you look at the Gospels, you're looking at what was written decades after what actually happened. The book of Mark is actually Peter's account, written by Mark. Mark was nowhere to be found during those days. So what you have is memory. These books are actually written on memory that, let's face it, just a few seconds ago, my memory failed me. So what's to say
what you did there?
No, it wasn't intentional. Trust me, it wasn't. But look at what happens, though. If you're writing something that took place decades ago, decades later, your memory will fail you on certain things. You understand what I'm saying? And so the Bible is written, yes, it was inspired. Yes, God said, write this. But the people that wrote these things are fallible.
Yeah. I agree.
Yep.
So you have to take it for what it's worth. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, maybe you can take, this gospel, that gospel, put it all together, and you get the whole picture. You understand what I'm saying? But there are also certain things that take place that, was it 4,000 people? Was it 5,000 people? Or was it two incidences that took place? You see what I'm saying? And so, these are things that you have to look at when you're reading the Bible. You have to take all of these things into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, I
the Bible.
Go ahead, Wayne.
I'm sorry. I mean, the Bible, the way we see it today, well, the precursor to what we see today was put together with the help of Constantine, just like the institution, just like the Roman Catholic Church. They needed a building, they needed a book, and so, I mean, they were not, before this, they were still reading the same writings, the epistles and the Torah and stuff, but putting it together was very much a politically driven move to put it together the way we have now. And when King James translated it, he had a heavy focus on kingdoms, kings, bishops. Everything in it has been, not everything, but things have been molded and kind of put into this area that was for political gain, for a political agenda from the beginning of having a Bible compiled in which to begin. And so you just have to see it for what it is, and that's good. You're talking about an interlinear Bible. Well, that kind of takes out the bishop words and all these words that were added in later, and brings it to the heart of what was originally being said by these authors.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you mind if I switch it up one more time? Wayne, I don't know if you do or not, but do you not really follow, but kind of keep up with some of these pastors these days, like Creflo trying to get the jet and those type of things? Do you keep up with any of that kind of stuff? You just see it on Facebook, or what do you think about that kind of stuff?
I don't search out for it, but a lot of the things that I read, it still tells me about, John Hagee's blood moons or Creflo's $65 million, all these things I still hear about it. Only the big things. I mean, I don't keep up with the latest Benny Hinn gossip or whatever could be going on. But if it's noteworthy enough to where it's getting mainstream attention, I do. But I try not to, because I tell you, every time I do, I want to write a status or make a YouTube video about it. And I'm thinking this is probably not the best place for me to be in my mindset. So I don't really keep up with it like I used to, but I do know about a lot of things you're talking about.
Because I was going to ask you if you knew who Brian Carn was.
No, I don't.
Carn. Okay. If you Google his name, Brian Carn and psychic, just Google that. There was a viral video that one of our sisters, Miss Justice, did exposing him. He basically plagiarized a psychic. It was going into for the year of 2015. I think it was New Year's Eve 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a psychic. Was her name Cheryl Lynn or something like that?
Yes.
She's a psychic. She did a YouTube video. I guess Miss Justice said one of her subscribers showed her that video, and Miss Justice had just did a video on Brian Carn called No Receipts, basically things that he prophesied on New Year's Eve that were going to happen in 2015, and she did a video saying this didn't happen, this didn't happen, this didn't happen. And one of her subscribers sent her a video of this psychic, and lo and behold, a lot of things that he said were word for word, just like the psychic said. She did hers in February. He did his in December. So it's like 10 months later, and he's passing it off as thus saith the Lord. God said. I can get Dre to send you the link to the video, but it was just so crazy to plagiarize it and pass it off, and to see the amount of people still defending this guy after watching that video. Yeah, to this day, we'll still defend him. And it is amazing. He said he doesn't copy a psychic. Nobody said you copied a psychic. Or follow. He never said he didn't plagiarize. He said he doesn't follow a psychic. But so either somebody's giving it to him, or he watched it himself, because it was word for word. Talked about, he said George W. Bush was going to die. George W. Bush is still alive to this day. Senior. Just a lot of stuff word for word.
But the psychic also said the same thing.
Right, exactly. And what Miss Justice did was played the psychic saying it, and then she played Brian Carn saying it on multiple things I think it was about 5 or 6 things, but there were more in the video, and people were saying, well, this edited, and she sliced it and diced it. It was just weird. It was weird, and I just knew if you knew about that or not, but apparently not.
I would like
Drake,
to see that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure we get you a copy of that video. And if you just go to the comments under that YouTube video, OMG. Ridiculous. People are defending him. And that's when we talk about mad church disease. These people idolize these pastors. They idolize them, put them up on a pedestal, and and these pastors allow it. So, and when you were a pastor, did people idolize you, or could you tell when people were patting you on the back? Because I know when I was there, I needed to hear, oh, that was a great pastor, great sermon, Brother Jonathan. I didn't let him call me nothing but brother. I was an elder, assistant pastor, but he called me brother. Oh, man, that was a good sermon. If I didn't hear that, I didn't think I did a good job. I loved the accolades. It made me feel good. How did that affect you in any type of way when you were a pastor?
It made me uncomfortable, actually. I was a pretty low key person when it came to that. I didn't really. Part of my problem with not being able probably to transition them outside of the institutional church, much to my detriment, was because I was not really a cult of personality. I really tried to keep myself out of that, even though there are people. But just because of your position, doesn't matter who you are going to be that way towards you. Yeah, there was that. I was never ever comfortable with that at any point in my walk as a pastor, to where I never wanted that or invited it. And in fact, I tried to discourage it. And in the end, it kind of got people to not really. Follow me out the door too. So, like if I would have, I mean, there are some preachers like Jim Jones who can get 1,000 people to move to South America, and then Kool-Aid. And I couldn't get 50 people to leave the building. Yeah, and so in a way that was good, but I guess I could have used my power for good instead of evil, but I didn't. So,
wow. So you were never put on a pedestal.
Well, if I did, I was uncomfortable with it, and I never did like that, because I've always been a buck the system type person, even as a pastor, even as the main tool in the system. I was the man, and I would buck the system still, so I was a contradiction. So, like, even when I was under a pastor, I wasn't, like, rebellious purposely, but I didn't take him. I never held a man at a place higher in regard than anybody else, and so I felt uncomfortable when people would do that to me, and so I was kind of a living contradiction there.
Okay, that was good though. That's good, and you maintain that, and that probably helped you, I guess. Did you receive love offerings and anniversary gifts and all this kind of stuff, and pastoral anniversaries? Did you get all that kind of stuff?
Whenever it was our anniversary, our wedding anniversary, they threw us a party and gave us a card with some money in it a couple times. That's about. Yeah, they did do that. They did that a couple times, definitely.
Only a couple?
Never did get a car or nothing like that, but I did. And, they took up an offering and surprised me once. We were out of town, and we came back from in town. It was around the time of our anniversary. We were out of town for our anniversary, and we came back. And then after church Sunday, they had cake and they surprised us and all. And it was. They did that every once in a while, yeah, but it was far and few between. We didn't see that all the time.
Man, that's amazing. That is truly amazing. Because the churches we were in, man, it was every birthday, his birthday. They didn't do it for me, but my pastor, we set it up. I mean, they have a big dinner, and everybody ate off of paper plates, and he get to eat off of the real china.
Well, they knew that if it wasn't a surprise, then it wasn't going to get done. So
okay, gotcha. Man, a lot of money. A lot of money was given. You know, and I'm glad you said what you said about this vocation and when you reached out to those other pastors. Don't worry about the money. You said God will take care of you. Just step out on. You claiming about faith. Step out on faith. Step out on faith. That's it, man. Step away from it. It was hard. Go ahead.
Oh, you get the hardest part about leaving really isn't the finances. It's trying to find your identity.
Yeah, who you are.
If your identity is wrapped up in being a pastor, you're going to have a hard time. But you're going to even overcome that. You will. You'll find your new identity in Christ and not in your position. And that's when you'll really find freedom.
Wow, that's good. That's good. I'm
just here nodding my head the whole time because you hit the nail right on the head with that one right there. Your identity in Christ.
Yeah,
I'm done.
And that's so real because John says it all the time. A lot of these pastors' whole identity is wrapped up in their title. If you took away the title, who would they be? Who would they be? So, you know, if they work a secular job, when they go on a secular job, it's just William. Okay, that's all you're, just William. But when you step inside the church, your Apostle Davis or, Bishop Davis or Pastor Davis, and you get the respect, you get the accolades, you get the reverence. And so, if you take that away, especially if you don't have a job outside, and that's all you do, you quote-unquote full-time ministry. And, if you take that away from them, who are you? And you have to sit there and face that question, who am I without this title, without this church, without this building? Because the doors of the church closed in America. Not only would pastors have to check themselves and ask them who they are, but a lot of the pew sitters would have to ask themselves who they are. Who are you outside of the church? If you can't go to a church building anymore, say we get one state-run church that the state owns and the state runs, and no other church is allowed, what would you do? Pastor, pew sitter, what would you do? You have to ask yourself that question. What would you do? Who are you?
Yeah. So Wayne, I'm assuming that based on what you've been saying thus far, as far as your church experience was concerned, that you didn't go by your title, you went by your name. Am I correct?
No, I didn't like that. Right, I did not like being called Pastor Wayne or Pastor Watley. I wanted to be called just Wayne. Even when I was a pastor, I was definitely in a unique position as far as from a lot of pastors I knew even then, even though I was wrapped up into the institution and I was creating all these hierarchical graphs of how the church structure would look like. Even then, I didn't, and it was really, and I think really a part of it may have also been pride. I didn't want to be called Pastor Wayne or whatever because, I'm different than that, but yet I wasn't. I mean, I was still perpetrating and perpetuating the role that I was eventually going to come to not see as biblical. But I think that, I did not like to be called Pastor Wayne or anything. And it was weird because people would still call me pastor, even though I would tell them not to. There were people who had a problem with that. And so I think a lot of that was self-gratification of having pride and not being that type of person, I guess. And I hate to admit that now, but, there's even a pride in being against the system while you're in the system for those type of people. And I was a very unique character in that way. I didn't like the vibrato, but yet I would take the benefits of being a pastor. Okay.
Yeah, because we hear that a lot. We're a different church. I'm a different type of pastor. But you really aren't. This is a church for people who don't like church. Right, you still part of
exactly.
We're a different type of church. We're a different type of church. We're a different type of way of gathering. Just ask Apostle about that.
Yeah.
You know what always gets me? When I hear this and people say that, well, you don't like the church you're in, you need to get in a good Bible-believing church. Okay, what church is going to say they're not a Bible-believing church? Have y'all heard that phrase before? Oh, yeah, we're a good Bible-believing church. What? Okay, so what? So this church is a Quran-believing church? What? I mean, what do you mean? I thought all churches were Bible-believing churches. I think that's the stupidest phrase I've ever heard in my life. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. A Bible-believing church. Yeah, you should be, right? Oh, man, that's crazy. I'm a wife-loving husband. Yeah.
A nozzle-pumping gas station.
Anyway, I'm good. I don't have any more questions.
I just have one more question. Because originally the show was supposed to be about the church building, and trust me, we built on a whole lot.
Yeah.
In this whole conversation. But Wayne, let me just ask you one final question. What was it about the church building? And I think you might have covered it already, but I just want to end on this note. What was it about the church building that vexed you so much?
Well, the fact that we were spending 80% of our income on either salary for me or church building maintenance, and putting all this effort towards something that really had nothing to do with the body of Christ, it really started to discourage me. Like I said, the building was built in the mid-50s and has barely been updated since then. It's an old building that was paid off, and there was some major problems in the ventilation, and it's still a dangerous place. And so I was like, look, guys, we're not going to fix this. We don't need to put all this money towards fixing this. This building really should be given to somebody more ambitious than us on that aspect, or somebody that would just tear down the building and rebuild if that's what they want to do. And I'm like, all of this was happening at the end of my time there. And I was like, look, I just feel like I'm a part of a scam. The very few people that were giving towards keeping this building open, not giving towards the kingdom of God.
Giving to God.
And I was like, yeah, I couldn't be a part of it. I'm like, you don't even have to funnel your giving through an institution. If you feel led to give to a cause because you feel led to give to that cause, give to them directly, because if you put it in the hands of the church, I know that the money you're giving, not all of it, if any of it, is going to even see that organization that you want to give the money to, or that person. If you want to give money to a person, bless that person directly. Don't filter it in, because it gets lost. A lot of it gets lost, and it comes out, and it ends up not being as big of the blessing as you want it to, if you want to give it to this person or to this group of missionaries, or whatever your mind is on, wanting to give your money to. If you want to give it all, if you funnel it into the church, it's gonna have to go through all of this, this process of what are the priorities. Well, the priorities of a church is to be self-sustained before anything else. And so I was just tired of that. And at the end, I was like, this is just a big game. We're trying to keep up and prop up this building, kind of like on that movie Weekend at Bernie's. They propped up the dead guy. Look, this is a dead building, and we're propping it up as if this is something that's life-giving, when it's not. You people are the life givers, because the Spirit of God is in you, not this building. This building, we could meet outside, and it would be, we would still have just as big of an impact as we are right now. I mean, and so I left there because the whole building side of it, and even bigger churches, the bigger the church, the more money it is to keep up with it. And there's always building funds, putting fountains in the foyer or pavilion, whatever it's called. All these things that we're trying to do, it's building up a house of cards. It doesn't matter to the long haul of anything concerning God.
Wow. House of cards. Wow. That was the last show we did, right? The last show we did was
called House
of Cards. Okay.
Yeah. You brought up what I like to call the March of Dimes syndrome. A lot of people don't know that when you donate $1 to the March of Dimes, only a dime of it ends up going towards research and birth defects. You know what I'm saying? Which means that 90 cents of that dollar is going towards something totally different.
Organization.
It's going straight into the organization, and people don't understand that. So when you said that, 80-90% of what was coming into the church monetarily was going straight into the church, and then only 10% was going into, helping people, and that, bypass funneling through the church, just go ahead and, donate. If you see somebody homeless, just go ahead and donate to. Come on, man. That right there, you done made my day.
Well, any organization's first goal is for self-preservation, and their second goal might be for what you're giving towards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did have another question. Sorry, because I think Andre found you because of a video he saw on YouTube. That one video where you talked about leaving. What led you to actually make that video on that day at that time?
I had to talk to somebody about it, and to me, making videos is very therapeutic. It's cathartic, I guess. And making that, I had to sort out my thoughts. It's not like I could go and just talk to anybody and they would understand. So I said, look, I need to put this out there. The people who are going to watch this video are the ones who are going to be searching for it, and they're going to want to hear this anyway. And so I figure if I said my experience, maybe another pastor that is going through something similar might get something from it. And so it was twofold. It was for me to be able to just finally talk about it, and also hopefully somebody else it would be contagious and somebody would get from it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you made it. I'm glad that you took the time to come and fellowship with us on this morning. We know you could be in church, but you chose to kick it with us. We appreciate that. We really do. We were scheduled for last week, but somebody decided they want to come into the world. Evelyn, So congrats again to you, Brother Andre, for your baby girl. I hope you don't get any sleep for the next 9 months or so, but I'm messing with you, brother. But, Wayne, we really appreciate you coming on, man. Thought we would have some callers that may have had some questions for you, but nobody called. We thank you, brother. We really appreciate it. Did you have any questions for us? Anything you want to know about us?
Since Andre first contacted me, I've been going back and listening to some of your podcasts, and I didn't even realize this until I guess you said pimppreacher.com, that I guess I have been following you guys already for at least a year and a half now, or however long. I think I found your article on the Confederate flag back whenever that whole thing was really a hot topic about a year or so ago, and I've been following you guys on Twitter and stuff. So I didn't even realize it was the same group, and so going back and listening to your podcast. I guess I don't really have any questions. I definitely would like to keep in touch and to and just to really be more involved in listening to you guys. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Okay, we appreciate. I saw you on the fan page, on the Real Talk Radio fan page. I think I saw you. I liked the made a comment, or you liked something. Like, oh yeah, that's Brother Wayne. So I'll be sending you a friend request. If people want to reach you and they want to get in touch with you, if they had any more questions, how can people reach you? Oh,
well, the best way would be.
Go ahead.
The best way would be to go to my YouTube channel because I have links to all my social media on there. My YouTube channel used to be called American Wayne before I changed it just to my name. And so if you go to youtube.com/American Wayne, you can get my Facebook, my email, and my Twitter is all connected onto my YouTube channel. So that's the best way to reach out to me, just like what Andre did. I assume that's how you found me anyway. So.
Well, that's exactly how I found you. Through your YouTube page, I found. I also caught you on Facebook through that. Also Twitter from there as well. So yeah, if anyone wants to get in contact with Wayne Watley, his YouTube page is definitely the place to go.
Gotcha. You plan on writing a book, man?
Thanks a lot, guys.
You plan on writing a book? That would be good.
If I wrote a book?
Yeah, you plan on writing one anytime soon about the experience?
I've thought about it. I've got a lot of things that I could write about. I just don't know how to go about it. I guess I have friends that have written books. I should. A couple people have asked me to. So
okay, add me to that list.
If I write a book, it'll definitely be something that I'll announce though. And
cool.
I may be writing a book, so I don't know. You're kind of one of the ones who's kind of confirmed that maybe I should finally write a book. So
okay, yeah. All right then, glad, because that'd be a book worth reading, man. And a good title would be the title of today's show. Oh man.
Well, looking forward to sending this to the fans. Thank you.
All right, yeah, it'll be up on YouTube probably tomorrow. I think. Yeah, we'll get on YouTube tomorrow. We can share this show on your YouTube page or your Facebook page too. So we'll get this show on your Facebook page as well. So, fellas, any last words, final comments, anything? Not like Tommy Lahren, but you know.
Nah, nothing final like comment. That. But Wayne, I definitely want to thank you for coming on the show. You're gracious. You're a gracious person, man. I mean, just talking with you. Makes me feel as if I've already known you for years. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, you are welcome back on the show anytime you want. You know, call in. Let us know you're calling in. We definitely put you out there and let you know that, you know, so that people can hear what you have to say because, you know, I think that, you know, a lot of what you're saying, there are people that really need to hear you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think, Wayne,
and that'll be, we can have. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Lenore. I'm sorry.
To get my final thoughts on the on Wayne here. You're a very what's the word? You're, throughout this whole interview, your character has always been on the top. From your experiences in church and being a pastor, being a youth pastor, and coming out of it, your character has always been for people. So it's almost as if you leaving the church was a better service to you than when you were in the church, and how it all unfolded as Andre brought you on to the show here is almost miraculous. And like Andre said, your story definitely needs to be more widespread, more placed out there. And if we could definitely use our platform for that, then so be it, because what you're going through and what we've all been through, it's affecting other people out there as well, and I think they need to definitely hear your story. So I definitely thank you for coming on and sharing yourself and expressing yourself so thoroughly. And like Twin was saying earlier, we were wrapped up in so much hurt that we were bombarding people or, you know, like really going for the jugular. But with you, it's like you bypass all of the hurt and you're now exposing your heart, and that's key and instrumental in the healing of people out here who definitely need to hear your story.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I think. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. I think if Fox News and CNN and they can have their analysts and their specialists, I think we got our own analysts and our own specialists in Brother Wayne Watley, because he was the man at his church. He was the pastor. I was just a little assistant pastor, if you could even call me that. But, we got the real deal here, and we do appreciate you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Wayne Watley.
Not to be confused with Randy Watson.
Sexual chocolate.
That's right. That's our sexual white chocolate brother, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. All right.
Thanks a lot for everything, guys. I appreciate everything.
We appreciate you guys. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our show for today. We thank you. Like I told Wayne, you could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend this time with us. If you're listening to us live, we thank you. This show will be available on TuneIn Radio tomorrow. It will be available on YouTube if we can get Andre to step away from his baby girl for a few hours to make this video. If not, Dre, let me know, and I'll do it for you, brother.
I got this one, man. I got it.
Okay. Go to our website, www.4realtalkradio.com, to get all of our social media. We thank you guys. We love you, and we'll see you next week. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Real Talk Radio. Check out our website at www.4realtalkradio.com for updates on all of our social media platforms, including our YouTube channel and Facebook page. Feel free to send us any of your comments, questions, or criticisms. If this show or any of our past shows have helped you in any way, please feel free to share it with your friends and family. See you next week.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be hard. Like early 90s heavy metal hard.
I'm yelling and screaming and I'm loud. Roar!
Geico makes it easy. You can review and update your policy or report a claim on Geico.com or the Geico mobile app. Because shouldn't we all have a little less stress in our lives?
I'm not even upset about anything.
Fashion Emergency Hotline.
Help. Labor Day weekend is my last chance for a summer selfie. My last look got hundreds of likes. How do I top it?
Just go to Old Navy.
Old Navy?
Yep, Old Navy's got the season's most liked styles. Like dresses in the prettiest prints, jeans in new washes, and colorful tees to pair with them.
I like that.
Yeah, all jeans, all dresses, and all tees are 50% off through Monday.
50% off all those styles? I really like that. Thank you.
Don't thank me. Thank Old Navy. Valid 9/2 to 9/5. Active, licensed, and men's package tees excluded.